Good morning and a warm welcome from Shropshire in the UK. Today I am going to be propagating some of my Verbena bonariensis. Easy for me to say. I'll put the name up because I'm not sure I've said that right. But I have grown it from seed this year, which is a first. I've not been able to get that from seed ever. This is my first year that it's got it. And I'm really grateful that it's worked, because if you're anything like me, I have been trying to cultivate a big batch of this wonderful plant, which is very on trend at the moment. I've been trying to cultivate a big patch for years, and so I've been taking cuttings and cuttings and cuttings, and they don't really seem to do well in my garden. I don't have this big vast flowing array of the verbena above all other plants, all wispy and beautiful. And it's quite an expensive plant to buy. So I have been taking cuttings for years. And would you believe it? Last year, when we had the coldest winter for years, I forgot to take cuttings and lost the lot. So I have grown this verbena from seed. Now there is only four plants here, but I am impressed with that, to be honest, because I haven't been able to grow anything from seed, and I have tried for years to do it. So if you want me to show you how to double the number of plants we've got, then stay tuned. Verbena bonariensis is a wonderful plant, but it's quite small in the garden because it's just really about long, tall strands going through. So the key to get best value out of your plant is to snip it off and make it bushier. So in the same principle that we have done with dahlias, which you can do with any multi-flowering stem plant. Is that the right combination of words? Something like that. Those words in any combination you want. So plants that flower on multiple stems at any one time. So you have dahlias, you have zinnias, cosmos, snapdragons, all of this type of plant. Now, most of those are seeds, annual seeds, but that doesn't matter. They can all be pinched out, and what that does is make a bushier plant with more shooting stems that can generate flowers. So these verbena are the same. So you can cut them at the bottom and it will create more growth. So if we look closely at these, if I can show you, they are already forming new growth at the bottom. So they are wanting to shoot out. So if I cut off at that point there, then we'll have two new stems for that plant. Another one there, I don't know whether that's a better one. So I know these plants will be bushier, but rather than waste the toppings, then I can plant those again and get new plants. So double the number of plants in one go. Now with the dahlias, when I was pinching out the dahlias, you couldn't replant the top growth because the stem was hollow, so it's not suitable for growing roots. But verbena and any of the other plants that I made is different, and they will be able to pot on from there. So let's get started. I have a variety of tools. Let me show you. So I have the plants. Let's put those aside for the time being. I have a bit of horticultural gravel. What we want to do is make a compost mix that's really free draining. It's about making sure that they are able to easily grow the roots. I have a small pot, it doesn't need to be large, so that's where I'm going to put the compost. I've got a dibber of sorts, anything will do, but it's just about making small holes to fit the tube, to fit the stem. I have something to take sharp, clean cuts, just a compost tool, and as a experiment I have a little jar of water. So one of these seedlings, one of these cuttings is going to just be put straight into water, and we're going to see which sprouts roots the quickest. I'm fairly certain it will work, but both versions will work, but just to be on the safe side, I want to do both versions. Everything I've tried this year with the water method has worked, so I'm fairly confident this will also work. And if that's the case, this water method is so much easier because you can see when the roots are formed. You don't need to disturb them, then plant them up and you're done. But traditional methods is about planting the plant up, so I will be making sure I do that first. I also have hormone rooting compound. I think this is optional because I have had this for so long. Any active ingredient in it, I am sure, must have stopped working. I don't know. It's so old, the label has gone, so I don't know if there is a use by, but I have it, so I'm going to use it. But I don't think this is essential, and it's certainly not required for the water method. So let's fill the pot. If you were doing this in the wild, so in your garden, then I would highly recommend that you take with you a polythene bag and put the cuttings in straight away, into the bag straight away. And that means that the water loss from the plant is minimal. So all of these leaves will cause water loss by a process called transpiration. And so the longer the plant is without its natural feeding mechanism, the more chance or the more risk you have of it failing. So if you're taking your cuttings from a garden, then put it in a bag so that you minimise the transpiration. But as we're all controlled here, I'm going to take them and plant them straight away, then that's not required. So we have a plant, and I am going to take it right from the bottom. I am going to take off the lower leaves and I'm going to reduce these leaves by half. Now that will minimise the transpiration, but it's got enough leaf on it that will still allow it to grow. So I'm going to take all my cuttings first. There we are. We have 3 cuttings ready to be potted on. So if we take the first one, is easy. Take it, pop it in the water. There we are. That's the job finished. So now, for the remaining ones, it's a simple matter of dipping into the rooting compost, putting it into the hole right on the edge, as far down as you can go. There we have it. So those plants will grow within a couple of weeks. We should have good roots forming on these plants, and they will be ready to pot up into individual plants. And we can potentially do the same again. So we'll know if they are growing, because they will grow or they'll die, one of the two. I plant them at the edge of the pot, so rather than the middle, I plant them around the edge because it helps the root growth. It helps produce stronger, sturdier roots. So as the new roots form and hit the side and they've got nowhere to go, it will send a message back up to the plant to create new ones to keep going. So you get lots more roots and therefore lots more ability to take up the water and nutrients from doing it that way. If you plant it straight into the middle, then the root will grow, but it's got a long way before it hits something that will stop it to grow. So what you'll end up finding is you'll have one big root circling around the bottom, and whilst that's a good root, it doesn't aid the delivery of water and nutrition to the plant, and so this is a better way of doing it. So there we have it. Let's wait a few weeks and see what the results are. So I took the cuttings on the 19th of June, and it is now the 3rd of July. So that's just over 2 weeks really. And look, isn't that fantastic? Look at the roots that have grown on that. And the interesting thing that I found is that's from the water. So that was the cutting that I put into the water. Now, I had a bit of a disaster along the way because I left the cuttings that were in the compost outside, and I looked a few days later and they looked as if they really weren't managing well with it. So I quickly took them out of the compost and put them in the water. I then left them outside, and I think the wind blew away some of them. So what I was left with was one. I only put one in the water to start with, and I ended up with one, and the others have disappeared from sight. I have since, after finding all of the ones bar one disappeared, I moved the glass of water inside so it's a little bit more stable. So it was in the greenhouse, so it would have got quite warm, I would have thought, but it could also have been kept humid, so the environment would have been better than gusty wind and all of the water evaporating through the leaves. So that is where we are. So that is brilliant. So now all it needs to do is pop that one up and we're good to go. So here we have a pot of free draining compost, and what I'm going to do is just make a nice hole in the middle this time because the roots are already growing, and place that into the compost. So there we go. Just going to top that up with a bit more, just so that we're fully covered. And I will water that in. And if you're interested to know what's happened with the previous plants, so the ones that I took the cuttings off, then this is them. So that's one, growing really quite well. As you can see, it's grown really well from the bottom. And another one. So again, that's got some extra growth there. So they appear to have spread really well from the side, and therefore I could, if I was so inclined, and I may well be with a few more days growth, to actually cut off some of these side shoots and do exactly the same. So, but this time I will only put it in the water. I'm not going to bother with the compost. That was such a good result with the water. I am just going to do that. So I've kind of resigned myself I'm not really going to get them flowering this year. I'll be very surprised. So if I can just increase my plants this year, so that's what I'm concentrating on, increasing them so that next year they are big enough to plant out and I can get the lovely display that I dream of. Here's hoping. So that is how I would recommend propagating many plants, many softwood plants in this instance. So if you want me to go over how you propagate any other plants, please leave a note in the comments below and I will create a video to show you how to propagate other plants for free.